Welcome to Get to Biz, a podcast where we discuss business, spirituality, and life motivation for everyday living. We're here to help you navigate through life using these down-to-earth principles and up-to-date knowledge. Now, without further ado, let's get to biz.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to our mini-series. We're continuing with our special guest, Shawn. This is the second part of this mini-series. If you missed the first part, please go back and find us at Get to Biz. I'm your host, Bryant, here with my co-host, Tony, and again, our sound engineer, Charlie, and our special guest, Shawn. And at Get to Biz, as always, what we do is bring you business motivation and education, add a little bit of humor to it. And so let's get down to biz. And what we want to talk about now is you're thinking about your business and growing. One of the things you're going to be faced with is pricing. How do you charge for the goods and services that you have? What things do you take into consideration as you're thinking about what you want to sell to your consumer? And there are a few things to think about. You know, one is who's your audience and who you're selling to. Are you selling from me to another business who's going to sell to someone else, or are you direct to consumer? And I'm going to love talking about this segment because everyone on here has goods and services that they've sold. More importantly, you've had things that you bought and you made a determination if it was priced right and how much you decided to do a comparison, a shopping comparison. So I think out of this, we're going to end up talking about is just both ends of the spectrum, one from the service and good provider and the consumer. And so I'll start with the service and good provider. And I'm gonna let give the floor to our special guest here, as he's done this numerous times over many years, and how he thinks about whenever he has his good and service, and thinking about it from the lens of a small business or a startup. How do you think they should go about pricing their goods and service to the general market?
Right. Yeah. So it's a lot easier, I think, than what it used to be because there's so much information around competitive pricing and what people are actually willing to pay for a lot of products. So unless you have something net new to the world, you should be able to reach out and see what other competition is pricing similar products at, right? And that should influence not only your price, but it helps you understand where your cost needs to be, right? So do you need to tighten up on your manufacturing, or do you need to source from different distribution to get your cost in line to where the industry is pricing your type of product, right? To make sure that you're making enough money for the time and effort that you're putting into it, you got to understand what other people are willing to pay. And it depends on how you plan on distributing your product as well. Obviously, over the internet, you can reach a lot of different people. If you talk about traditional brick and mortar, it starts to change how many people you can reach. I remember back in the day where e-commerce always had better pricing than brick and mortar, right, early on. Right. And then brick and mortar went to, you guys remember mail-in rebates, and you got rid of all that, went to instant rebates.
I ran a rebate system at a former firm that I used to work at.
And then it was like everyday low pricing. And I think Walmart started with that to where the lines are kind of blurred now between brick and mortar pricing and e-commerce pricing now, right? So it should be easier to find out what price you should be at, but the customer will always tell you what you want with their wallets too, what the price should be.
I think just the convenience aspect, as far as the e-commerce and the brick and mortar, I think the convenience aspect is probably like the defining point. Would you agree? It's almost like going to Walmart or going to 7-Eleven to pay a little extra or to.
Yeah, it used to be, but I think Amazon kind of turned that even on its head to say, wait a couple days for that product, and we're going to give it to you at the same price. So they put a lot of pressure on people to get the price down, and they baked in that Prime model, so shipping didn't become a factor. It used to be, get a premium for that convenience, and now Amazon is like, we can be convenient upwards of 24 to 72 hours. It's crazy.
Speaking of that, I heard they was trying to take over the whole shipping industry, like over FedEx and over
they got their hands.
UPS.
They got their hands in so much.
It's scary.
Yeah, they're building a pretty good. They're becoming a very big logistics company very fast. They're running into something that we talk about in this segment, like, are you brick and mortar or are you e-com? So you can reach more people through the web platform, but you can only distribute as fast as your distribution network is.
Right.
And so for Amazon to give, and I may have talked about this on the previous podcast, the best example of where I see them winning. So you want to reduce your costs. So if the brick and mortar does have a much higher cost to serve, because you have the staff, you have stores, you have rent, you have all these different things that you're going to do. In Amazon or an online e-tailer, you actually only have usually one distribution point or a few. People aren't going into the store. You don't have to staff away, different staffing model. But what Amazon has found out now, and you were talking about, Tony, that convenience, they're still hampered by convenience. If it takes 2 to 3 days for me to get it, no matter how much lower it is, I can probably go out and get it elsewhere. And so they were figuring out that they're losing that market. So they're trying to figure out how to get closer and closer and closer to the consumer. So one of the things they're doing is taking advantage of these strip malls or malls where stores have gone out of business or where they vacant. They're setting those up into Amazon little mini hubs. And now what they're doing, they're basically placing the Amazon in the community. So they pretty much now have created a retail brick and mortar store without the employees. They're just delivering it from it.
Yeah.
So you think about it.
So it's just like a mini fulfillment center, basically, right? Or is that just?
Yeah, it's a mini.
Or is it just pay on demand or?
It's a retail footprint, so you can go in, you get the product. You don't even have to check out. Like they got some sophisticated way that it syncs up to your app and all the other stuff.
Well, that's one model they have where you can go in the store. But I'm saying they actually are putting many distribution centers in these malls to get to you faster. So here's where you can see that shine through at Whole Foods. On Amazon Prime through Whole Foods, you can go online right now and order, and then in 2 hours have a delivery to you. The reason they're able to do that is because Whole Foods, you have multiple pickup points in a metropolitan area. They're thinking about that same thing. And part of this is a hypothesis, people, but it's just based on what I'm seeing and being in the industry a while. But part of that is what they're thinking about in going into these vacant strip malls in that store format you're talking about, Shawn. Now I'm closer to the people. I can get it to you faster. Now I've eliminated that barrier of my 2-day, 3-day delivery. If I'm getting it to you the same day, why get in your car and go somewhere else? And I got the best price. And they're being vertically integrated, which you're talking about, Tony, around the elimination or reduction of UPS and FedEx and their reliance on them. So they're becoming a world-class logistics company.
So where does share shifting?
Well, man, we can spend a whole 3 hours on share shift. But what I will say, back to this on pricing, when you talk about the convenience factor, a question is, what do customers want to pay more for? Can you still put a premium on convenience, or is that gone? I don't know. I get torn. If you look at some channels that had convenience, they used to charge a premium on it.
Right.
But Shawn, now you're right. With the advancement of the internet, we saw those retailers competing. I worked at a firm where they competed with themselves online. I'll just make this story very short. They had this price match guarantee. So if the price match guarantee worked as you would get 10%, they would match the price and then give you 10% of the difference. But their online merchants always had a better price than they had in store. So they were price matching themselves and giving you 10%. And I worked for this organization and then got my discount on top of that. So I'm like, you're going to learn today. I got to make you stop doing this.
Do you remember regional pricing?
I do.
Depending on what part of the country you were in, the price.
Retailers still do that.
They do? At the brick and mortar?
At the brick and mortar.
Explain that some more, Shawn. What is that retail part?
Yeah, so in my previous slides, depending on the area of the world or area of the country, there were different pricing models based on competition, based on how areas of the country were sourcing different things. So we had 3 different levels of pricing. So to make it simple, think of East Coast versus West Coast pricing, and maybe we can get a little bit more out of the West Coast side of our business, and that price could be $5, $10 higher than you would find it on the East Coast in our stores. And the internet has made that tough. So it's interesting that people are still doing it. And it's a practice. Yeah, still doing it. And actually, places do it in your everyday life. It's called or known as price discrimination. You can look this up. It's price discrimination. You see this a lot, not only in those brick and mortar stores. Shawn, I see this in your industry. Oh, yeah.
I get a different price depending on the day I book. You see this in the airline industry. You see this with concert ticket prices. So don't be too surprised. I see you saying it's surprised, but you're doing that right now. You like did it yesterday.
It was basic what we did at retail. In hospitality, it's a little bit more sophisticated because there is there's
you pick the day you discriminate versus the region. I pick the day.
Because ours is real time, right? So if a hotel across the street doesn't have occupancy and they lower their price, then our hotel has to lower our price regardless of where we are so that we can be competitive. So there's a system that runs in the background that's keeping track of everyone's pricing to tell us when we need to go down in price or when we can go up in price. And it happens real time, and it is different days of the week.
Wow.
So again, this man is surprised they're doing that, and he does it every day. That's funny. In real time, multiple times a day, apparently.
Yeah.
So but yeah, retailers still practice that. A lot of them do. And it's based on, if they were to tell you how they're doing it and why they're doing it, they're basing it on level of competition, as well as economic factors in the community. So if you're in a more fluent area, supposedly, with a lack of competition, you're going to have the highest price. And if you think about places like that naturally have higher prices, such as a San Francisco or Hawaii, those are priced different because your labor model is different. You have to pay more to attract and retain them. So it's a common practice. But places such as, I'm hoping what happens out of this at this work from home and stuff. I know some businesses can't do this, but since location is taken out of it, I'm thinking there's going to be some shift in the labor model, either through not housing people at these big corporate facilities or not worrying about having to relocate or pay someone a New York or San Francisco wage when they're not in New York or San Francisco.
Right.
Or the inverse, you take your wage from New York and San Francisco and move to one of these mass-free states. You get
I think they're gonna take the stance of we're gonna pay you what we pay you, and you choose where you live.
It could be, and then maybe we'll see that equivalize.
So there's really no generalization that you guys see that can become of this, meaning that this is everybody's working remotely, and probably got the same type of task in the job description. So there's no correlation or like generalization that you guys see that saying like, okay, you've been in San Francisco, but now we're on the web or online, so now your price and cost is going to be the same as the person is in Ohio with the same skill sets.
So here's my theory on it, and I've been molding this as this evolves. It's going to come down to what it comes down to all the time, the company's cost. And the fact is they got these buildings for people to work in, they have leases. And I think companies whose leases are going to be timed with recovery and getting out of the pandemic, people are going to be able to work from home. But say if you were a company that just signed a new lease in 2020, that's a 5-10 year lease.
Right.
You got to have your people come back, or you got to try and break that lease or renegotiate. You're still paying those bills.
Or use that building for an Amazon fulfillment center.
Exactly. And it sounds like what you're both saying is when you're thinking about pricing your own model, whether you're a big company, small company just starting out, you need to factor in your cost to operate, cost to serve, and what type of headwinds you might face.
Bake all that in. I think a lot of people don't bake in total cost, right? It's more than just, the cost I pay to distributor or a manufacturer. It is my cost to serve. It's my cost to ship and pack, and the time that either I'm spending it if I'm a small business setting out on my own. There's a cost to all that. It's an opportunity cost that may be harder to measure, to really understand what your total cost is. And then deciding, is the delta of what you can charge for retail for that product or service and your cost, is it worth it? Is that opportunity cost worth it? So that's a decision, folks. But again, there's a lot of information out there, so you can really, there's not a lot of net new industries out here. People are reinventing the mousetrap. Uber is the one I think of that reinvented the mousetrap. A lot of these industries are pretty much the same, so you can get an idea of what. I spent some time at Groupon, and our business model to work, we had to understand a lot of different industries' business models, and one of them was the variable cost, right? And a lot of small startups and people getting into business don't understand that variable cost of things that might change and fluctuate and impact your cost to serve, but your retail maybe can't change. So you're just impacting your margin and what you're taking home.
So Shawn, dive in that just real quickly for our listeners to tell them this in a very simplistic way, the difference in that fixed cost. You didn't say fixed cost, but I'm gonna set it up for you.
Variable
Fixed cost and variable cost, just so they'll know the difference in as they approach their pricing strategy.
I've been trying to test out some of that drop ship model online myself. And one of the variable costs that I've immediately recognized is the variable cost to ship to a customer, depending on where they live when they order it from you, right? So that's going to change. Now, there's some things you can do to get to kind of a flat rate depending on your product and partner with some of the shipping services like FedEx. But for somebody starting out and somebody who's testing it out like me, I've had a model of I can expect X amount of dollars from every product that I ship direct to a customer. But depending on where you live, that fluctuates 10 to 20% in my cost, right? And that changes. So that's not an immediate example of variable cost. My fixed cost is like just that cost that I pay for a product. But those variable costs can be a lot of different things.
So your fixed cost would be your cost of goods, or another way of saying like your rent could be a fixed cost in your operation. So things that are steady and stay pretty much the same throughout the journey, or call it your fiscal year. And your variable costs are where you see fluctuations. Like in your own home, a variable cost will be your utility, so to speak, depending on how hot it is outside or how cold it is and this and that. That's where you see that fluctuation. So those are the things we're calling variable costs. But your fixed costs would be your lease, your rent, or your mortgage. Those things don't fluctuate, technically speaking, over the life of them. So that's some good points.
So would you say your biggest variable cost would be shipping?
And for this model that I've been testing out, but there can be a wide range depending on your business model. Variable costs can be crazy.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about variable costs, and you talked about, changing tone, I know you went through this, you were, hopefully not giving too much away as you think about your business or e-tailing and things like that. E-commerce. How did you think about e-commerce? How did you think about your pricing strategy? So like I said, we have the fixed cost of the goods. You know how much it is delivered to you. How did you go about thinking about your pricing or today when on your e-commerce sites? Yeah,
that's why I brought up shipping, because shipping was one of our biggest variable costs that, early on didn't really take into consideration. After you got your cost of goods and you got your base model, but now you get some individuals from the UK or some strange land over there in Brazil, and it's totally different because it's a total different time zone, and now you done chopped off an extra $20 for shipping that's dug into your bottom line, and now that can be your biggest industry, and now you're getting orders, but now it's you didn't
eat into your profit, because
eating into your profit big time. So I think that was the biggest. That's why I asked Shawn about the shipping aspect, because that was the biggest thing that the biggest eye opener for myself was the shipping aspect.
So once you learned that, did you go back and change your pricing strategy or model or to account for that, or did you just say, hey, I know I'm gonna make less profit?
Yeah, that was the thing, just to make less profit, because it really didn't. I mean, we were making so much profit on that aspect anyway. It's just like, damn, it's extra $20. You know what I mean? So, but we just kind of winded it, and it was kind of like a learning lesson from that aspect. But
so
shipping.
I think I would assume, now obviously not working for Apple, but I gotta assume some of the things that they've done recently with their packaging and their products are impacting their shipping price and probably reducing it. They're taking headphones out, they're taking the AC adapter out.
Right.
Getting smaller. I imagine case packs and inner packs are getting smaller and more condensed, saving them on packaging. Price of their product isn't going down at all. But I imagine their cost to serve is being reduced.
Yeah,
people are pissed off about that though.
That's the thing. These companies, what people have to understand, whether your business is you're a small entrepreneur or you're a firm, at the end of the day, it's about profits. And you have to find a way. If you're not able to get to your profit hurdles or keep a sustainable business, you have to think about how to do that. If you have a problem with volume, then you have to figure out how to start taking cost out. Those kind of things to make sure that you're going to be viable. And, you know, a lot of people, we're talking about this pricing, you know, there's some people that are just, you know, we talked about it now from the business standpoint of people who are thinking about selling, how they think about their pricing and making money and things like that. Think about it from the customer standpoint. Like they're looking at the shelf. And they are trying to figure out, how much should I pay? Should I not pay? Is this price right? Is it good? Now, the internet has certainly helped you to be able to compare prices a lot sooner and faster and easier before you go out, or you can make the purchase online. But I know just from, you know, one of the things I like sharing insight too is people wonder, how did that price become what it was on the shelf? What went into that? Why is Shawn telling me I'm going to pay $5.99 for this thing? Why is Tony telling me I'm going to pay $29.99 for this different thing? And so just give some insights into that. People, there's literally people like the three of us sitting on this phone, sitting on this, in this podcast, in this medium. We're sitting at a desk one day, cubicle, office, open floor, and we kind of say, how much do I want to charge today?
We get for this?
And that's what you do.
Yep.
Now, it is a lot of science that goes behind it, but believe it or not, there are people out there telling you how much you're going to pay for this. They're assigning values to it.
Assigning values.
Now, what you have as a consumer is you can make that value right, too high, or too low with your wallet. So that's the thing the customer needs to keep in mind, is that at the end of the day, your voice does matter, and it shows itself through sales. So I know, Shawn, you know, given early in your career, I know technology has changed it a lot, but how did you, when you, instead of just picking a number out the air that you want to tell the customer, think about some ways or insights or tools that you use to get to a price, and then how you monitor that price to see how the customer reacted to it.
Wow. So I have an example early on when the hard drive business got to a terabyte, and I don't remember the exact price.
I mean, what are they up to now? Tony, I know you do.
No, they didn't even sell them anyway. It's almost obsolete with cloud. The cloud now.
Yeah, the cloud is the.
But that was a lot back then.
Yeah, we had terabytes coming out, and I want to say my original price was like $500 for 1 terabyte hard drive. It wasn't solid state. They were still moving components inside of the drives back then, and you know, we thought we can get 500. I want to say like the
were those solid state? Solid state
or solid state. Solid state started to come out, but those terabytes were still, you turn them on, you can hear the wheels inside turning pieces, right? Now it's different. I think they got solid state terabytes now. But you know, the 500 gig, we essentially just doubled it from the 500 gig and started there. You know, we knew what we could get for that one and figured, okay, if we double the capacity, we should get double the price. What we learned is there probably should be a benefit, right? Moore's law, like the higher it gets, we should see some benefit, you know, to the customer. And there was a little bit of benefit in the cost of a terabyte versus 2 500 gigs. So we had to pass that along to the customer. That $500, just doubling it, wasn't going to work.
And so, like, I could just buy 2 of them. Well, I guess it's a convenience standpoint.
Yeah, but see, you know, our thought process was, now you need 2 of these big machines, big bulky boxes, or you can have one
big.
So you actually took almost the opposite approach, saying, because I'm bringing you convenience in 1 terabyte, 1 box, you weren't too far from saying I can charge you more for 1 than you could get for the 2. Because you're saying I got 1 box.
You got 1 box. Everything's on there. You got to manage different cords and plug in different things in. It was.
So what was the price difference correlation when from the 500 gig to the 1 terabyte?
I want to say the 500. It had to be like half of that back then.
Yeah. So he literally just marked it up twice.
Doubled it. Yeah.
Like I said, you probably would have been better off then.
I guess that makes sense though. It's like, hey, they doing paying this, just push it in this way.
That comes down to your pricing strategy. Like I said, he could have taken,
because you know, the game industry, the customers aren't really letting the price go up there, because an Xbox and a PlayStation are pretty expensive to make, right? There's only like $20 a margin in that actual product to the company. That's why the video game business, the actual software is such a big piece of the business, because if you just bought the hardware, they really make money on the games, right? Now they're really making money on the games and not printing discs. But they haven't been able to really raise that price a lot. They don't get a lot of margin there. And the customer, that's an example of the customer dictating the price by their wallet and saying $500 is about it. All right, so you make a machine that's below that.
So, and when you talk about that, that's the customer's willingness to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, no matter what you do, the customer's going to decide what they want to pay for something.
Right.
And you have to understand that as you're thinking through your cost of goods that you have and all those fixed costs, variable costs, etc. The customer's willingness to pay is the most, for let's say, the most you're going to be able to get. So you're going to have to be able to cover all your costs, expenses, profit, etc. out of that. So you need to find that ceiling first on what the customer's willingness to pay is, and then start thinking about your cost and understanding that. A lot of people don't do that. They'll try to do a cost plus model. Oh, my cost of goods, my fixed costs plus my variable costs equal this. I now want to make 50% margin, therefore I'm going to double it to that. And then they never took any time to look out and say like, well, you have the highest price in the market
out there.
Do you have a value proposition that commands that? Or are you a me too?
Yep. And if you're a high involved product where people review it, do a lot of reviewing, there's like a low involved purchase, what I consider like a McDonald's, right? Not a lot of price shopping for a value meal or Big Mac. But if you're buying an iPad or a tablet, you're probably shopping around, right? And you're determining how much the max amount you're willing to pay. And there's more of a competitive shopping done by the customers for things like that.
So when you notice that in that competitive space, again, you're trying to figure out what price you want to pay to a customer. Like we're talking about this from the customer mindset, putting out a mental model of the customer. In a highly competitive space, they are going to price shop. So you can't gap. So you need to think about your product and service. Is it in a competitive space? Or think about it this way, is it highly substitutable? Can they go across the street and get the same thing that you're offering?
Hey, Brian, to the people that don't know, can you explain value proposition again? Actually, it's a couple of terms that you guys have mentioned that,
let us know.
Laymen coming in.
No, I'm using those so they can go back and hear the previous podcast. That's where we can break those down.
All of them don't do that stuff.
But no, your value proposition is basically what are you offering? And typically in a service good, I'll just make it simple. Are you offering better quality? Are you improving time? Are you helping them be more efficient? Do you have a better price? A lot of people like competing on price. So it's basically, what is it that you're offering that's going to make them choose you over someone else is when I think about it. So when you think about your value proposition, it needs to be directly tied to your pricing. If you're competing on price, then that means you need to have a better price than what the average price is in the market. If your value proposition is all about quality, you need to make sure you have better quality than that. And that's where you think about when I say highly substitutable. If all those things are equal across you and your peers, that means they can go to you and your peers and get the same thing. So that's going to be a more competitive environment. And you need to make sure you know what the price you can get so you can make sure that your costs are in line. And what I was getting at on that about that value proposition, what people typically will do is say, well, here are all my costs and here's how much I want to make. So here's what I'm going to price it at. But the market is only going to pay what the market will bear. Your customer will tell you what they're going to pay for something. And if you're going to have a higher price than your closest comparable item in the marketplace, you need to be offering a whole lot of value.
A lot more incentive.
Exactly. You got to give them a heck of a lot of incentive for that. And Shawn, I see you doing a lot of head nodding here.
And it can't be like subjective quality or value either. Like, oh, this is a really important piece for me, but the customer may not.
Don't see that level of importance. Right.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot. What's important to you may not be important to the consumer. I love using the housing market that way. You get there if you're selling a home for sale by owner, and if you're in the market for buying a home, you never want to be there with that owner.
Oh yeah,
because they're gonna tell you stuff
everything
about, they did. You like, okay, and this wall is red. It was the accent something. My grandmother picked this out from a blah blah blah.
We're gonna tear that down anyway. So
exactly. I don't know. And you're gonna say that in front of them, and they're gonna get mad.
They'll say things like, "Oh, I just painted this. This is that." When you're haggling over price, they'll value the new paint job as value to the house, and you're thinking, I got to paint it again anyway.
Right.
My value would be.
And so what we're saying by it is, whatever your additional value that you're assigning to your price, it needs to be something that is relatable to the consumer. It can't be your own thing. Nobody cares about your sweat equity. Nobody cares about what you put into it. It's what they're going to get out of it.
Right.
So that's how you need to think about your pricing. What are you going to get? What are they going to get out this thing? What are you doing for them? What problem are you solving, et cetera?
And be realistic about how your product is positioned. Again, unless it's net new in the industry and you're kind of an innovator, but if you're entering a space that product already exists. Just be realistic on, is your product quality to the top tier players? And think about all the different layers of toilet paper. This is a good example. If you want to go into toilet paper business, there's a lot of different types of quality of toilet paper. You got to be realistic about where your product fits in there. Are you basic one ply?
Exactly.
If you are, price accordingly.
And one of the simple things out there, if you don't know, ask people.
Right.
Just go ask. Do a survey. Do those kind of things to fill out what the willingness to pay is. It's not going to be based on how much you want to make. You may find out that, oh my God, I'm going to make more than I thought I was going to make. Or you're going to say, oh, I'm going to make a lot less, therefore I shouldn't do this business. And all these things we're talking about when it comes to Get to Biz, is like giving these little nuggets of insight for you, for those of you that are on your early stage entrepreneurs or thinking about getting into the business, just some frameworks and quick tips on some pitfalls to avoid, at least having the information to go forward. And so, as we get close to the segment, I really enjoy this topic. I really get passionate about business, especially at early stage, and then a few things around these topics such as pricing. And the great thing about this, all of us have that experience in how do you price? How do you make profits? How do you do that? And so we know a lot more to come on that, but definitely stick with us. You'll get a bit more insight to this, and, reach out to us and we can help you along this journey. So as we get ready to close out or take a break from this segment, again, thanks for joining us at Get the Biz. Any of you gentlemen want to leave some parting words of wisdom for our listeners, our audience out there around pricing strategy or willingness to pay?
I just always say be realistic. Have those difficult conversations with yourself. Again, we use the term a lot. Nobody likes to be told their baby is ugly, and nobody likes to be told their product is less valuable than they want it to be, right? But you got to face it, because ultimately it's business at the end of the day. You got to take that emotional piece out of it.
Okay. Tom?
Shawn summed it up there.
Well, but sometimes that baby's ugly, huh?
Sometimes it's just an ugly baby.
It's not as pretty as you think.
It's not as pretty as you think. It ain't ugly, but not as pretty. I like that, Shawn. It's not as pretty as you think.
Go in private and just love it yourself.
You love it, everybody gonna pay $100 for it,
Yeah,
right.
Oh my goodness. So with that, this mini series, we're gonna keep this type of thing going on. This one about your willingness to pay. What you've heard here is just make sure you're a student of the pricing. Make sure you understand what the competitive landscape has. Make sure you understand what the pricing ceiling is, and then along with it, understand your cost structure of your business. We talked about fixed costs, variable costs, and then cost to serve. That means kind of like how are you going to distribute, and then how are you going to pay yourself? What type of cost to serve is there along with that? So with that, folks, we're going to take a break from this segment, and we'll see you next time on Get to Biz. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks for joining us on this segment. We would love to hear your feedback about today's subjects. Shoot us a message on Instagram at Get2Biz or email us at info@gettobiz.com to stay up to date with all our future endeavors. This podcast is made possible by viewers like you. We hope the info given today encourages you to get up and get to biz.